This is Dead Reckoning. This is the subsequent 3 expansions to Dead Reckoning. Hype on this game was absolutely insane. And now that the FOMO brain fog has abated, it's time for me to really look back at this sizable investment and see, was it actually worth it? First though, let's take a few minutes to talk about what this game is. This is your ship. These are islands. Your ship rides around these islands, collecting produced resources, trying to take over control of them, battling other players, and of course the most thematic application, buying card upgrades with cargo. And yeah, you heard me right. You upgrade your cards. You never add a card to your deck like the typical deck builder. You're simply upgrading them and making them more powerful throughout the game. You start with 12 cards and you upgrade a crew card each and every turn. On top of that, the aforementioned advancements are purchased and slid into the card at the end of each turn. These advancements create completely overpowered cards by the end of the game. Hopefully you're building them thoughtfully and the different advancements are synergizing with each other. But in some cases, they're also synergizing with other cards in your deck that you hope to draw at the same time. The downside is these cards become incredibly filled with all of these symbols. And by the end of the game, you're sitting there scratching your head and wondering how you're going to best use them and in what order. The game gives you a lot of leeway. You play the cards and you kind of just use the symbols in the order in which you want to use them. So there's endless possibilities, especially when there's a lot of interacting symbols on the cards and they might interact with another card. There's just a lot to think about, and this can create some analysis paralysis. But these cards are essentially what allow you to move around the board, produce resources, battle with other players, take control of islands, build buildings, all of the stuff. You have a hand limit of 6, you draw 4 each and every turn, and you play whatever you want. I really want to highlight the battle system here. I think this mechanic might be divisive with some, especially because it deals with luck. You see, as you're attacking another ship or a merchant ship or other buildings, there's a lot of different ways to attack. You collect cubes equal to the number of cannons on the cards that you played. You collect the defense cubes and you drop them all in this cardboard ship tower, and they splay out onto a board and land on different icons. Those icons will deal damage, decide the winner of the battle, and award things like cargo and treasure. I say it's divisive because there's a subset of the gaming population that don't like any sort of player interaction, especially negative interaction. I do want to point out here that, yeah, you are battling, but as you defend, you could be gaining other resources. You only sink your ship if you take 5 damage. Yeah, that sucks a little bit, but it's not incredibly damaging to you. You do have to give up 5 of your coins to the other player. You start back on the harbor, but that's about it. It's honestly not that big of a deal. And on top of that, you have the opportunity to gain that extra stuff. So it's not incredibly punishing. And at the same time, it's kind of optional. If you have a couple of pacifists in your group, you could really get through most of the game without ever battling each other, which would be a shame because the table presence is completely highlighted by this cardboard ship, dice tower, and the subsequent, I guess, water board that these cubes are flowing out into. The other part that might be divisive here is that it's complete luck. You're throwing these cubes out there. You have no control over them whatsoever. As an attacker, all you can do to really prepare yourself and make yourself feel like you might have an advantage is to build cards with more of those cannon symbols and also upgrade your ship with more of those cannon symbols, because anything you've upgraded on your ship, if that cannon symbol is visible, or really any symbol is visible, you can use that symbol in your action. But outside of that and a few battle abilities, it's kind of a crapshoot. And having more cubes definitely does not guarantee that you're going to win that battle. The other nice thing about a battle is it goes towards achievements or end game points, but suffice it to say, it is a complete luck-driven mechanic. I'll also point out, outside of the achievement that's gained, it's not incredibly impactful to the game overall. It's not a make or break. If someone keeps attacking you for whatever reason, it's not going to be that big of a deal. The other mitigation you have as a defender are to build the buildings. There's a couple different defense buildings that naturally, as somebody goes into a space, before they can do anything else, they have to battle the buildings. The buildings have defense or natural cubes that they're going to roll. If you have the cannon, for example, they automatically take damage. So there are deterrents that you can kind of prepare with that help to stop people from picking on you so much. I talked a little bit about upgrading ships. That is another core action that these cards will help you do, and upgrading a ship is a really big deal. There's a couple empty slots on the ship as you start. You can upgrade those to give you more symbols, maybe even more storage. I don't think I mentioned this. You store your treasure and your cargo and have to deliver them to your harbor. They give you new symbols to help you to take control of islands, roll more cubes in battle, get more movement at the beginning of a turn, all of those different things. On top of that, each one of those upgrades count towards points at the end game. They also count towards another achievement that gives you even more points if you get 4 of those upgrades. Speaking of achievements, let's take a look at the achievement board. That's kind of what drives all of your actions in this game, and really it amounts to a point salad. So for the different achievements, you have to explore tiles, collect and turn in 12 cargo, gain 30 treasure, build 5 buildings, upgrade 3 cards to level 4, have 4 ship upgrades, put down 6 permanent cubes on an island, sink a ship, and win 4 different battles. All of which are natural things you're doing in the game already. It's just a way to earn some extra points by doing so. Once you do achieve one of those goals, you put an achievement token on there. And once you've achieved 4 of them, the game ends. And when the game ends, you add up all of those achievements. You add up points for buildings that you've built. You add up points for the islands that you control. You add up points for ship upgrades. And you add up points for any endgame advancements that you've sleeved into your cards. Some general notes about this game is it's really long. On BGG, it calls it an hour and a half. At 2 players, I mean, we've been at 2 hours, maybe an hour and 45 minutes on a lucky day, but it always feels pretty long. It's an afternoon killer. So if you have some time to kill, totally fine. This is not a casual game to quickly get to the table. Setup and takedown has to be of note as well. It's pretty intense. There's a significant amount in each one of those stages. It's just something else to consider when getting this thing to the table. It's clearly over 2 hours when you take into account setting this thing up and putting it away. The game state is always changing. There's a lot of player interaction. While I said battle is sort of optional, it is. I mean, there are 2 achievements that aren't necessary, but can be had if you do battle. But the other thing is there's interaction on the islands. Like I said, islands are a big point resource. And what that looks like is putting cubes on islands and kicking other people's off, taking control. Once you take control, you get permanent cubes on that island. And that could be quite a battle, especially when there's points that range from like 3 to 10 points on a particular island. There can be some hotly contested areas there, and that leads to constant game state change and will hamper plans. It's not a game where you have a long-term strategy. It's a game where you read and react, make new decisions based upon what other players are doing. Rules overhead is pretty high. I would say the core gameplay is pretty simple. Draw 4 cards, play whatever you want, resolve all of the symbols. There's a nice player aid that tells you what all of those symbols do. It's pretty easy. That's basically the rules of the game at the high level. However, each one of the components of this game has some ticky-tack rules in which that aren't easily found in the rule book. They're not on a player aid. And I definitely still to this day, after quite a few plays, find myself digging through the rule book, trying to figure out little tiny nuances. There's rules around buildings and interacting with buildings. And when you go into a controlled island that has buildings and you taking damage and you having to attack them before you can do some things, but not everything on that island. There's rules around battle and card interactions and battle abilities. There's rules around what happens when your ship sinks. You lose some stuff, but not other stuff. If there's enough treasure on there, you lose that treasure. If not, you go to your treasure box and lose that, but you still keep the treasure on your boat. The aforementioned cubes on an island need to have more than half of the spots before you can take control. Once you take control, you use a permanent cube. There's just a lot of little stuff. And if you play this fairly consistently, it'll probably become second nature. Now, the base game is only part of the story. The original campaign gave access to multiple sagas. Then there's a subsequent campaign that gave us Letters of Marque with another saga, and they're pretty great. The system gives a ton of flexibility. You can mix in one saga, you can mix in all of them, you can mix in a couple of them. It doesn't really matter. You can play them as part of a 6-game campaign. You can play them just by themselves, and you can actually discover some of it via the campaign and then get done with the campaign and keep discovering more of it with the regular games. Basically, you can play any way you want. Each campaign comes with a number of advancement cards that you shuffle into the particular advancement deck. There's 4 different advancement decks, all related to a particular row of islands. And as those islands are flipped, you put cards out there. And some of these will end up being the campaign cards. And those campaign cards are encounters. You roll up onto that island and you pay the cargo cost, you flip it, and you start to read some flavor text. There's typically a choice on there. Sometimes it allows you to just go on your merry way and not interact with it and put it right back down. Or it asks you to go read some flavor in one of the 3 storybooks that come with these different sagas. And that leads to a daisy chain of choices and possibly reading more stuff, getting cards that you can slide in as advancements, getting cards that actually go right into the deck and could possibly come out later. Sometimes it unlocks new mechanics. There's extra boxes and envelopes that you can open up as part of the campaign. The cool thing is once you go through these encounters and fully unlock everything behind them, they're eliminated from the game. You'll never draw them again, I guess, unless you reset it. But the content behind them, all of the extra cards and advancements or mechanics, are now available to kind of come out of those advancement decks at any point in any future game. In general, I found the flavor text is actually pretty interesting and the decisions are pretty interesting. I can't give a judgment on like overarching story. I don't believe there is much. We've filtered everything in and are kind of going through it over time playing campaigns. So I haven't discerned whether there is an overarching story because we are pulling stuff out of all 3 sagas at once. I will note, every time you go into an encounter and you engage with it, you don't put it right back down. It adds a lot of time. I mean, for a game that is really pushing 2 hours for us, I think we had a campaign game that was 3 hours yesterday. And this is 2 players. And the back half of the game, we stopped interacting with anything whatsoever because we had to make dinner. We had to get this thing over with. It went way longer than we thought. I think there's good and bad there. The reason why it was taking so long is we wanted to engage with all of this stuff. The decisions are fun. The rewards and consequences are interesting. The mechanics that are unlocked are interesting. It's just fun to engage. Every time the card asked my wife if she was curious, go on and read more and do more stuff, she had to say yes. She couldn't say just no and let's just move on. She had to know what was kind of behind that door. Sometimes it hurt her, by the way, and sometimes it helps you. There's always some consolation prize, so it's never really feel bad, at least in everything that we've discovered so far. Regardless, it's fun to interact with that stuff. On a turn where you discover these encounters and go all the way through all of the different choices, and then there's the upkeep around going and grabbing cards it wants you to grab and unlocking mechanics and learning what those are. One of those turns is, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes in some cases. I mean, 5 to 10 minutes, I would say. And that's not just like a subjective estimate. I mean, there were a couple that took us quite a while. Maybe it's closer to 7 minutes. I don't know. Regardless, it does add a significant amount to the game. I don't know how often the campaign cards or the encounter cards come out when you're playing one saga at a time. So if you want to keep game time down, I would probably recommend only doing one saga at a time. We just YOLO'd it. We put everything in there. I wanted to see everything. I wanted to go through everything. I don't have time to play this game 100 times to get that stuff out. And there is a lot of content, by the way. There's a lot of content to go through. In Letters of Marque, which is the most recent Kickstarter campaign, it does give that 3rd saga. If you play with that 3rd saga, you have to play with an extra module. And that module is called Flags of the Old World. It comes with 2 different Empire boards. And those Empire boards are essentially favor tracks, right? You're trying to garner favor with each individual empire by delivering them Prime Cargo. Prime Cargo is a new token. They get thrown out on islands every single time they're revealed. More will be added throughout the entire game. And you also get a 13th card, an Explorer card, and that Explorer card allows you to flip these tokens. If you control the island that these tokens are on, you can actually take those tokens on board to your ship. So in order to make progress on these tracks, you collect these cargo, you go to your harbor and you turn them in and you go up the track. One of the interesting things is as you go up this track, if you get to a negative other empire symbol, I don't know what they're called, you have to go backwards on the other empire. If you go backwards enough, you actually put a bounty on your ship, which then allows other players to defeat you in battle and gain an extra bonus. So there is like balancing between those tracks. The benefit of going up on these tracks are each step you get a bonus. Those bonuses are variable each and every game. But if you get to the end of the track, it's just another achievement. It gives you valuable things. It's a fun little extra thing to go do. It does take your attention off of some other goals and can take a long time to get to the end of the track as an achievement. So if you're both focusing on trying to do that, I don't know, it feels like it extends the game to me. Overall, it feels like your typical bolt-on expansion. These are the types of expansions I don't really love myself. I got it as the completionist in not really knowing what it was. I think it's fine. But at the end of the day, was it an excuse to have another Kickstarter? Maybe it was. The other thing to note really quickly are there's mini expansions, Sea Dogs 1 and 2. I believe there's some Sea Dogs came with Letters of Marque. I'm not sure on that. But Sea Dogs are great. Sea Dogs I absolutely recommend for the price relative to what you get out of them in gameplay is spectacular. If you only get the core game, I absolutely recommend Sea Dogs. Sea Dogs give you asymmetric powers on cards. There's a system in drafting them and being able to sleeve them in, and they essentially replace what some of your core cards do. Sea Dogs are specific to different crew members, and you just slide them in that crew, and now you have an asymmetric power on that particular card for your entire game. This one's a no-brainer. It's an absolute get. So in general, to recap my feelings, it's a really fun game. Card crafting is really interesting. It's high interaction, but lower stakes. So I think even the people that hate Take That might find something they like here. It's long though. It's a huge table hog. There's some rules overhead, ticky-tack things that you're gonna be looking up. The campaign is really cool. The sagas are awesome. They're fun to mix into your game, but they add even more time. Letters of Marque, to me, totally not necessary. Nice to have. Your mileage may vary. Sea Dogs are an absolute must. No matter what version of this that you get, whether it be the core or absolutely everything, get Sea Dogs. They're great. All right, with all of that said, I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a like. Other than that, have yourself a great week.